Welcome back to Living from the Inside Out, Life in the Spiritual Lane. So glad that you can join us for part 3 of our conversation with Gopi Patel, Creating Harmony. This is our third and final segment, and it's been absolutely wonderful having Gopi's wisdom and expertise here on the podcast.
You know, I have been, when I moved to the UK from Africa, I had I was so innocent and so naive. You know, growing up in Africa was beautiful. It was like a little paradise. And in the container of our sheltered family life, we were joint family, big house. You know, I had never been shopping in my life. I'd been driven everywhere. I had all my clothes made for me. I was a domestically disabled princess, for sure. Right? So really just kind of, I had no idea how to take public transport when I came to Great Britain, how to get from I had to learn everything. But one of the other things I didn't know is I did not understand racism and discrimination. In fact, I didn't even have a word for that. And that's exactly what I encountered when I arrived. Because for some reason, the education system, they were changing things in the UK. I had to do a year in a very special college before I could enter university. And in that particular college, I was enrolled. I was the only Asian girl. And there were 3 people that decided to make my life difficult. Quite difficult, physically and verbally. So it was something I didn't understand. I was like, the beginning, I said, what have I done to you? I don't even know you. But I didn't have any words for it, which was fantastic. Because although I felt the pain, I remember one day walking home thinking, gosh, and I was just saying, if I don't understand what they're doing, then they can't understand what they're doing. And if I'm feeling this pain from what they're doing, they must also be feeling some kind of pain that's making them do this kind of thing. It was just like a door opened very softly, and when that door opened, it was my attitude change. It was like, no longer, why are they doing this? It's like, oh, poor souls, they must have some difficulty in their lives for them to be behaving like this. So then what I decided to do was take up a project. Every morning, I would go to the center for 6 o'clock meditation. And 6 to 6:30 would be the meditation, and 6:30 would be our regular reading of text and Murli. And so I decided that every morning I would dedicate that half hour to just really sending good wishes. Really, because I thought this isn't good for them. Forget about me. It's okay. I can take it. But this isn't good for them. And I just used to sit, and my conversations with God would be like, please wake up and have a really good day, and just sending so much love and light. And I would just, feel so much of God's love being channeled through, because I was just really holding the intention that those souls experience love at the beginning of their day. And, that love carried me through it. And a month and a half later, 1 left, 2 became my best friends, and they still are today. So when with retrospect, when I look at that experience, it's good not to be clever. It's good not to know too much. Because sometimes we have this terminology nowadays. They create a word for every experience. And then you put yourself in jail of all those words. And then you find other words to try and release yourself from that jail. Right? And it's just a chess game. And I didn't have any words for racism, discrimination, being a victim, nothing. And because I didn't have those words, I didn't put my feelings in a prison. So it was easy to open to God. And it was easy to see through the behavior. So when you've done that, then pretty much nothing's impossible.
Yeah, definitely. 2 best friends out of that. what I hear in that, though, which, the innocence of the child, all of us here in this room have the words. We know victim, we know racism, we know right, wrong. We have strong opinions about all of these things.
That's the problem. Really, that's the seed of the problem, if I may say so.
Well, please do. I mean, I've made my own journey from the social activist to the meditator, and I believe this is inner activism. What I'm doing inside of me is helping the world. I believe that from my own experience, but make a case for that for us. How do we step away? Why would we want to step away from those clear opinions about right, wrong, unjust, victim, oppressor, because they exist out there?
Because they polarize. And you cannot be an instrument to bring harmony. And what is true brings things together. It doesn't divide it. Now, it was so clear for me because I was in South Africa on one occasion. And you remember the Race and Reconciliation Committee that was created to handle the cases from apartheid. So they were having a conference and they were actually inviting young leaders from all over South Africa because they wanted to bring in the young generation, the next generation, into the dialogue. But when I arrived and I was one of the keynote speakers, what I witnessed was a generation that had been instruments to liberate South Africa from bondage and apartheid. They played a role, a very important role, to allow the next generation to grow with the rights they have today. And that's important. But they were saying to the next generation, carry this burden. And what the next generation was saying is, we don't see it the way you see it. We're not seeing justice. We're seeing harmony. So if you keep putting onto us the sack of justice and the cap of justice, it doesn't resonate. We can't activate, because for us, we see a South Africa of a harmony between races, between cultures, between language, and that's a very different lens. Justice is a deep reaction to wrongs inside, but it's also stems and it's fed by an attitude of righteousness. And that attitude is what serves to divide and polarize. And the day I woke up to my attitude of righteousness, oh gosh, it was so disgusting and so shocking. I thought, oh, I'm like that. And I thought to myself, gosh, this is such a big world. And you can't keep penalizing somebody for what they're doing wrong. It's not in your hands to do that. This is me talking to myself. If they have done something wrong, they will experience it. Why should I add an axe to it? And I remember, just feeling again, dropping into the soul, stepping away from the opinion and stepping into the space of the soul, expanding in spiritual empathy. Because that's what the connection with the Supreme does. And that's when you then can become a channel to help bring transformation, to help glue, to help bridge, to help bring harmony. But as long as you're holding an opinion about something, you're not listening. And it polarizes things even more. I always, one thing I learned very early on, if I'm seeing a problem, I am the problem. I used to challenge my perspective a lot. Why am I seeing this like this? Because I remember working with Daddy. Here we are, we'd be working with a group of souls that are like with each other. And then we take them to Daddy Janki. They sit down in front, she just gives them drishti. And it's like nothing happened. And then she turns around and says, Gopi, see, magic. And I'm like, how did you do that? And I realized so deeply, we have this expression in India, Jaisi drishti vesi srishti. As is your vision and the way you perceive something, your spiritual vision, so is your world. And so there's something about sustaining that very cleanliness at that very subtle level. This isn't gross stuff. This is a very subtle work inside. Don't lose the spiritual vision. See, there's perception. Perception can be influenced by beliefs. Perception can be influenced by other people's opinions. Perceptions can be influenced by what you've learned. But drishti is a spiritual vision. It's my light that's come on, the recognition that I'm a soul, I belong to the Supreme, and you are a soul and you belong to the Supreme. That's drishti. And that kind of drishti has the power to melt anyone. It was this guy, Steve, who used to work in the prisons in the UK, in a city in the UK that's one of the most notorious prisons in the country. And he used to regularly go into prisons to do work. And, he's a yogi. I mean, he's a BK teacher, but he's a very profound meditator and a big heart, big strapping guy. And, he'd go into the prisons and he recounts the first time he went into one of these prisons. And, he had 2 guards on either side. They had 4 guards inside with all the inmates, because these were like murderers and this. And one guy was particularly aggressive. And he came to the door and started shaking. And Steve just went into soul consciousness and just looked at him. And like in a second, he went, whoa. It was like he just moved back. It was like maybe he experienced, the soul felt something they hadn't felt before. And then the guard just calmly opened the door and Steve walked in. I mean, we underestimate the power of our spiritual vision. It has to be exercised.
So that spiritual vision is something we train in here. It's something
Yes.
we practice
Yes.
on a daily basis. And in those situations of justice and righteousness, we might say, but situations of justice, injustice, oppression, victims, etc., it seems to me that we call them the warrior sanskars. The fighter in me comes out, or the pitier. And you've gone to a different place completely. Did you have to jump over all that warrior fighting energy, or did you transform it? What happened to that?
Well, I think just the bottom gave way, really. When you practice enough, it just gives way. It can't hang around anymore. It just gives way. And I enjoyed the practice of strengthening spiritual drishti. Really, in every interaction with every soul, I just made it such a conscious practice. And it's brought so much love and a feeling of love, and an exchange of love. And so it's an attention I keep. And then what's happening is as you're attentive to your spiritual vision, then your eyes don't see stuff. Mm-hmm. And what you end up doing is you end up pushing out vibrations, pure vibrations. The thing is, if you think about it, when we get attached to things, love doesn't flow. We always say love makes the world go round, right? And love is not just an individual energy. You can't just hold on to love and say, oh, that's my love and that's your love. Love is something that is the fabric of what sustains us. Divine love, spiritual love, nature, it's the natural, it's everywhere. And so it's happening through us. So when you stay detached, you can remain loving. Does that make sense? Just loving. Okay. And then those rays reach where they need to reach.
So guide us on our detachment practice then.
Oh, well, the detachment practice, that.
Finger removing one finger at a time.
That's kind of stuff is what the steps of meditation are. Okay, so when you're faced in human relationships and situations, that's not the time to detach. That's the time to respond. But if you're not sufficiently detached enough, you don't respond, you react. So you've got to do a lot of homework and preparation. Detachment is consistent daily preparation to allow something bigger than you to flow through you. So in the mornings, we get up. I don't quickly touch my day. I don't touch the story. I don't touch even people in my life. I don't even touch the cell phone. Don't touch too many things. Just stay in the purity of that moment. I, the soul, soft being, belong to the Supreme. And enjoy the fluidity of that being. And then throughout the day, when you do have to get engaged in tasks and activities, which happens, and then the tendrils of your mind and intellect get intertwined in what you're doing, you have to have certain practices in the day to stop and just reclaim that baby back. Breathe and take it back. And it's such a beautiful thing. It's a bit like life organizes around your routine. You have breakfast at a certain time of day, lunch at a certain time of day, dinner at a certain time of day. So you need to fix these moments for your mind in the day and do it at the same time every day. Because when that's set in your routine, same time every day, guess what? It becomes a habit and a sanskara. It will start to make you detached after a while. Because it's just like when 8 o'clock comes and the body goes, I'm hungry. Because it's a routine. You see my point? So it's the same with moments of meditation and stepping back into that oasis of peace, consciously stepping away from what I have to do, what I've done. Stepping away from movement, just keeping the organs still, turning inside. I kind of sometimes like to visualize this body as a temple, and that the doors of the temple are the different senses, the eyes, the ears, the mouth. So I quietly just go and close each door. And I'm the sacred light inside. And I let myself get lost in that for a minute or two. It just recharges my mind. And then come back. Okay, what next? Sometimes when we can't figure something out, we're like a dog with a bone. Just don't let it go. Because it's only when you step away from it will another, thought, perspective enter. But that is practice. If you practice that, it becomes a habit. That habit supports you.
Right. It's not in the moment of discovering how attached you are that you practice detachment.
No.
It's beforehand.
Yeah. And you will feel like a custodian of love. That in every relationship, you are a custodian of love. And so how do you have to be to let love reach this person? To let love flow through you and reach that soul?